Hi, my name is Min-Gyu Kim, and I go by the name called Maddox, and I translate for some of the big events. And you might notice me on TV, like on the Twitch. I don't know. So if you notice me, then yeah, I'm the guy who translates.
When did you first get into StarCraft?
So this is a long story, actually. So I've been in as a gamer, I've been a nomad, and the first game I seen was actually BroodWar, of course, and it was actually installed one of my new computers. They installed me a demo version of BroodWar, and it actually didn't really function that much, honestly. It was because it was demo, and it was I thought it was like a copy of the real one, but it actually didn't really work. So all I had to do just was to find a way to diverge the restrictions back there. So I delved into internet, and I finally found the one that was functioning, and that's how I got into playing StarCraft.
So you were back in BroodWar days.
Yeah, I mean, I was a kid, so I was literally 9 or 10 years old when I started playing. So yeah, I was interested in. But actually, the one I was actually remember vividly of Pro StarCraft is actually when I was seeing the first Pro League finals ever happened, and I think it's remembered to 2003. And actually, I was having my hair shaved. And it was on my barbershop. My grandmother took me whenever I had to take a haircut. And then there was actually a small TV when I had to wait for my turn to get a haircut. And actually that day, there was actually, the finals was on air on that channel. And I get to see a boxer winning his Pro League trophy for the first time. And it was a team called Dongyang Orion. It was actually way before Team 1 came out. So yeah, I remember that moment of the first Pro League, and I got into StarCraft since. But I got into another game after that, when time went by. But I got back into StarCraft by StarCraft 2 in 2019, and then I started working since. Yeah.
So, did your parents have anything to say about seeing a video game on television?
Well, honestly, because I have a very long history of, I would say, bad history with my parents and my family because of the games. So I would say they were really against those things, and I was a good kid, and I was actually, I would say, one of the hardworking good kids, I was so to say, and I was actually very good than most of my peers. So yeah, so they wanted me to study more, and they wanted me to have a good career because I have some talents. So yeah, I mean, they were actually very against having interest in the gamer days, but I never, even though I was pursuing my other careers in academics, scholarship stuff, I never lost my interest in gaming.
So did you start to just fiendishly watch StarCraft from that point at the barbershop, or were there gaps?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, after that, I never stopped watching the Star League and StarCraft Esports, because the fact that they were so cool. I mean, just seeing them playing and seeing all the good players playing, and they were I don't know if you guys don't understand this for now, but it was seeing one of I would say a music icons, like K-pop stars. It was just like that. People, because when they were the shout chanting of that, literally I would hear female fans screaming like in front of the people, like in front of the row, and they were like really screaming for the guys like Boxer, the Marine, like they were actually very good looking at those days as well. So, I mean, they're good looking now, but yeah, especially back then, like it was just mind boggling that like to see that, I mean, it was just mesmerizing to see that like, oh my God, they're worshipped like, you know, stars, like they were like literally, celebrities. So yeah, like I never stopped watching the Star League until the end. So actually the gap happened after the Star League ended. So yeah, those were actually the days that I had like very good memories, like very fond memories at the time.
So I guess you're watching when like Boxer versus Yellow was a great rivalry.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you explain some of why that was a great rivalry?
So you have to say that Boxer, I mean, probably like a lot of other guys would explain a lot better, but I would say Boxer was an icon. Boxer was just one at the top that would actually represent the esports, the head figure. But you have to know that if one person dominates everything, what's the fun in that? So I would say there should be a rival, like who never. I would say like, you know, if there's a story, then you have a bad guy that never surpasses, you know, the protagonist. I would think that like Yellow was a kind of a figure of that. Like you needed a good antagonist. And I would say, like Boxer and Yellow of rivalry, I would say that was a symbolic figure of that. That was what I was thinking. So yeah, for that rivalry actually still lasts. I mean, there's every time they you know, go together on the TV shows and kind of stuff, they still talk about it, and you know, everyone like. They still argue about who's better or not, like who can beat him or not, like whatever it is. It was just so funny to think about that even all those years, those rivalry can make a good content and you know, not just a memory, it's just a thing that still goes on. So yeah, it's very historic.
And what were both of their nicknames?
So Boxer was called the Emperor, and Yellow was called the Storm. And had the nickname was actually was made by one of the commentators, Korean commentators back then, who was actually a story writer for the comics, and he was actually very brilliant about making all the nicknames, all the storylines of the every Star League. So yeah, the Emperor, literally, he was so good, and he was one of the stars that you have to make it a good image. So I think Emperor was definitely a right idea. And if you think about Storm, then why Yellow was a Storm? His aggression, his early aggression, he was never like intended to be, you know, a very greedy player. Because I would say it was just, I think it was more of a trend back then, because nobody thought about like how to be greedy, how to like make a third hatchery at first, and like you know, every other aspect of the late game of the Zerg actually developed much later than his era. So I would say it was just one of his survival strategies, but his play style, that his aggressive and I would say very, very tactical play style has made him like, oh, him's like just like guns blazing everywhere, like very like Storm. So yeah, I think that's the reason why he was called Storm.
He had another story though. Can you explain his second places?
Oh yeah, right. So he's the mysterious Kong, so to say. Yeah, I mean, he's very famous for getting a second places of all. And I would say he's the second guy of the seconds. Because, you know, the next player who would be the top at being the runner-ups, the king of runner-ups. So I would say he remains at the symbol of number 2, I would say. So yeah, I mean, like, this is also a very famous meme for now. Like, now you think of it, I think it also benefits him. I think he mentioned on the later interviews kind of stuff. So being made as a number 2 guy was actually, even though it would have been like very frustrating for him back then, but if you recall, there would have been, he's just more remembered than the guy at the first. I mean, someone actually remembers Yellow more than Boxer because of his history of being a second place of all time. So yeah, I mean, like, at the long term, if you look back, I mean, the image of being a second place title holder is actually a good thing, probably. Yeah.
Do you remember when Proleague was, I don't know if you remember it was announced, but do you remember some of those first seasons of Proleague?
I remember that there was a teams having a sponsorship and kind of stuff, and they were happening. So this was actually funny because this is even before like T1 days. T1 formed actually later, and there was, even though there were like some teams sponsored by some kind of like corporation, there was didn't happen in this kind of scale, like really big scale. And if you see that, like, corporations guy like KT, who was actually one of the largest telecom companies, or like guys like AMD, the manufacturer, or like, yeah, like the corporations who we actually hear our names in our daily lives now comes to sponsor the teams. They're actually really surprising, I would say. So yeah, even though I don't remember clearly because I was so young back then, but seeing all those like corporations having an interest to make it to like pro team was actually a very interesting, and I think that kind of made more people dragging into the pro esports, and they would all like many of the people would have said like, oh, I'm better than this guy. Why can't I be on the team? I think that kind of a motivation that the sponsorship makes actually contributed for a much being getting pro scene being a much larger scale. Yeah.
Can you go over some of the team names, team sponsors, and then like how large they are in Korea?
So now I get to see that, it was just besides like some of the few names, it actually was like really didn't like that big. But if you see that first teams like first of all KTF, now a KT roster. It was called KTF Magic Ends because it was like one of the Magic Ends was actually one of the like the cell phone brand. So KTF Magic Ends, now KT roster. And secondly, Dongyang Orion was actually now became called T1, SK Telecom T1. And AMD, it was Hexatron Dream Team. It was called now later, it was after like that season was later called AMD Dream Team. And then it was like the last a lot of changes and then finally went to Istro. So yeah, these three names I clearly remember. And like probably there was OGN actually sponsored one of the teams. Actually, it was called Sparkies. Now later then it became Height and then later Entus. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the big names I remember. And also later the SK Telecom joined and Samsung joined, of course, one of the biggest names and the biggest name in Korea. Yeah. So that's the thing, that's teams that I remember.
And CJ Entus.
Yes, CJ. Of course, Pentec, yeah, of course, like Pentec later we made. Yeah, a lot of teams there.
Can you kind of combine like how big CJ Entus is? Foreigners don't know that, but we actually still in America, we're seeing a lot of CJ in like our food and stuff like that. So can you just, for people who aren't aware, like why is CJ a big name?
So CJ, so if you have to understand about Korean history, Korean corporations history. So CJ is actually was actually part of Samsung. So Cheil is CJ is actually stand for Cheil Jaedong. Is actually was one of Jaedong is actually one of the means was if I like translate into English, Jaedong means sugar factory. So it's actually started off as a sugar factory, and Cheil was one of the brand that the Samsung empire had before it became Samsung. So there's still a kind of a names that you can easily see that, oh, this actually stemmed from the old Samsung. Like, so CJ was one of the, names, like one of the subsidies, so to say, subsidies that Samsung had. But it had, after it became the old founder died, they have the siblings kind of dispute kind of stuff, and they actually separated. And CJ was one of the companies that actually derived from Samsung era. So you need to understand CJ was actually one of the big names in Korean economy. So that's why CJ Entus, the team sponsored by CJ itself, was actually quite big. Well, I wouldn't say, I don't know if I don't know how actually it was because I wasn't there. So, but I would say CJ was a big name compared to many others because of that aspect.
Do you remember watching some of those Pro League or, well, any tournament intros? The cool one that everyone brings up is the comic book one, but then there's all these other intros. Can you explain just like how cool you thought that was, or maybe like one of your favorite intros?
My favorite intro was actually, I think this was the first, I guess, with the actual players. It was MyCube, I think. MyCube Star League was actually the first Star League had as a Star League brand. They had a new logo with a mouse on it. It was the first Star League that had a brand and a slogan introduced in the era. And I remember the players are introduced like that. And I remember seeing Boxer like slipping out of the, slipping out of the screen. Like it's just like pushing out of some of the graphics and then it's just coming out. It was actually a cool thing to see. And yeah, before then, like before MyCube era, I think they never had a intro that introduces the players features players as an intro. But I think MyCube was the first one that ever did. So I still remember the MyCube Star League. And yeah, definitely the ones you mentioned was actually on top of the list. But I would also think about 2010 Bacchus Star League as well. 2010 Bacchus was actually the one that Fantasy won, because I was a fan of Fantasy back then. And I remember of mine crossing out of the line with that really cunning smile. And yeah, that was actually very, very interesting to see. And although, that was the Wretched Kings, the Linkin Park song was actually a great introduction as well.
Can you explain why KTU was once called Fingerboom?
Oh, Fingerboom. Yeah, this is a little blurry for me, But KT had another team in the traditional sports called Sonic Boom. And people would say, I think people would mock KT of that team because, like, you know, if I think when KT was underperforming, I would say their finger went boom kind of stuff. So like I would say they kind of went on the meme as a, you know, metaphorical of KT Sonic Boom as a KT Fingerboom, I guess. That's a little blurry for me, so yeah, I don't remember exactly, but I think that was the sentiment.
Let's see here. Who's some of your favorite players from BroodWar?
Actually, I was initially, when I first saw the Star League, was actually, I started off as a first Pro League days, so it was 2003. So I don't really exactly be a fan of Boxer or Yellow. But I do remember the first finals of Zealous versus Yellow. And I remember being a fan of Zealous after the really, really hard-fought victory against Yellow. And he cried after his victory, and he actually like thanked his mom. Like, Mom, I love you so much. That's what I remember. So I became a fan of Zealous after that. And after he retired, I became a fan of Fantasy after, and its playstyle was actually very interesting, and because he was actually he was regarded one of a league terrorists, so-called say, because he knocked out every prominent, you know, big names in StarCraft, and he became like, what's this guy? The new guy just crushing out every famous player. Boo-hoo. We can't see the big players like Bisu or like, Flash getting into there. Hey, what the fuck? So like people were actually like mocking him as a league terrorist because it's just like, you know, he kind of dismantles popularity of the league. But I would say otherwise. It was for me, it was a very cool thing that having a new person coming out and crushing out every old reigning player was actually a very good thing for me. So yeah, I think I became a fan of him after that.
I do kind of remember that now that you bring it up. I think my friends were explaining it to me. Let's see here. So did you, you were actively watching by the time that you had the so-called Big Four, Flash, Bisu, Stork, Jaedong. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of go over I suppose, some of the big tournament wins? So let's go over Flash versus Jaedong first. How was that rivalry?
So Flash versus Jaedong, actually I have like, two things I remember. One is one of the most glorious days of StarCraft esports, and one actually represents one of the most devastating days of StarCraft esports. And it happened the same year. Interestingly, it happened in the same year, and well, the one happened way earlier than the latter, but still, it shows that how the duality of esports can be. And the first one I remember of Flash versus Jaedong was actually the one held in Shanghai. It was a finals on the Shanghai. It was a Korean Air Star League Season 2, and even though it was I think it was the first ever happened on overseas in LAN finals, because we had other cool stuff like were happening in like Guanli Beach, or have like in a big stadium, or even Olympic Park, and even on a grander scale, we have finals on the literally an airplane depot. On the airport. So yeah, how it can be more cooler than having a finals on the airport depot? well, you got here right after that next season that you get to have an overseas finals. Yeah, it was the coolest thing ever. It was happening in Shanghai. It was one of the famous landmark in front of one of the famous landmarks in Shanghai, and there were a lot of people showing up as a crowd. It was very I would say it was one of the glorious days of StarCraft esports. But at the same time, I remember how tragically it had been in Flash versus Jaedong in one of the MSL finals. It was everyone remembers, I think. It was the blackout. The one happened on game 3, I guess. On the game 3 verse in Flash versus Jaedong, the blackout happened on the MSL finals, and you needed to like decide how to go on with this matter, but the game was played 20 minutes after the game, and at the time Jaedong was ahead, so they gave Jaedong a victory instead of playing another game. So every fans like watching there was like so frustrated to see one of the biggest matchups happening in that finals, and people were gathered up in one of the halls in the NBC, the one the broadcasters provided, and later it kind of later revealed by other counterparts that it was actually deliberately set up there by the NBC itself, because they had a little interest in supporting the gaming broadcast. They wanted to converge the gaming broadcast into a music. So it was one of the schemes that happened, that it was like after the support for MSL like slowly cutting down. So they couldn't even rent the better places. They just like wanted to fill them on one of the halls that could just use on the spare. So, and they didn't check that if you turn on the heater, and there were already a lot of electricity flow going on there. I mean, if you turn on the heater, then you'll get a blackout, because there's a lot more than you can actually handle. So I see the Flash versus Jaedong has a lot of history, like being sailed together, and it was one of the greatest rivalry matches of all time. But all I remember about Flash versus Jaedong was actually shows that one of the dualities of the StarCraft esports showed on that 2 finals. So that's what I remember, and that's what I can tell about.
And then you talk about Bisu and his impact on the game.
Yeah, Bisu was a revolutionary. He became the revolutionary after his win against Xavier. And everyone didn't really think that Bisu would beat the guy, because he was so good, because he was dominating back then. Like, nobody even thought about it. The percentage of actually in one of the communities, the percentage of win rate, the percentage of chance of Bisu winning against Xavier was actually 2.67%. 2.67%. Can you believe it? Like, literally, he had a less than 3% chance of winning against Xavier. But he not only won against him, he just shut him out 3-0. And one of the maps was actually Prod's favor, so maybe he was actually prepared for leaving him a map, maybe stuff. But they never really thought about Bisu shutting him out like that. Not just only that, he showed a new playstyle called cursor DTs. Never would have thought in that moment that you can utilize DTs like that if you start out Corsairs. So one aspect of that, you change the whole aspect of pro domination or era, like pro era. And secondly, you changed the whole dynamics of the game. So those two things were actually very revolutionary at that time. So he became eventually a revolutionist. So they also commemorate the day of his victory against Savior as 3-3 revolution. So it happened on the March 3rd. So it happened on March 3rd. So it became 3-3 revolution, and now it also has, you know, I would say one of the commemorates, I would say, that they remember those stuffs.
Cool, cool. And then what is Stork's contribution?
Stork was actually the oldest from from the Big Four. So Stork actually debuted way earlier than the other three. So I would say like he was really good at the time, even before the other three guys came out. So Stork, I would say, he kind of overshadowed by other big names at the time, but I would also say that like Stork left pretty big notes in the StarCraft history as well, because he also, this is the funny thing, he also kind of regarded as a famous Kong legend, one of the famous Kong legends because of his like runner-ups history. But yeah, but he actually got some wins after that. So yeah, like it was yeah, it was I would say interesting figure. It was he is but I would say among those four, I would say he lasted the longest, I feel, because besides Jaedong, everyone struggled after the StarCraft 2 day, after StarCraft 2 came out, and I think Jaedong and Stork was the two names actually kind of, you know, I feel that made a name for themselves. Stork as maybe a Stork as a coach, I would say. So yeah, I would say Stork didn't really have the biggest impact from the all Big Four, but I would say he lasted the longest.
And you know, as a fan, what were your thoughts when you first heard about the Savior match fixing scandal?
Honestly, for me, it was like it wasn't real. It didn't feel real for me, because like just felt like, wait, is this actually possible? And seeing all of these people involved there, actually, even then I was so young. I mean, I was just like 14 at the time, like 14 or 15 at the time. So like, then what's next? What comes next? I would imagine. So yeah, all these guys are having a match fixed now and arrested and then now banned from the event. So what comes next? And how big are they all involved? I mean, then what comes after? Is this going to be end? And it's just is it just going out like that? It felt like more of a, you know, story comes in a movie, you know. It was like, what the hell? And I think that's the time that I kind of slowly digressing from the interest, I say, because not only I had to prepare for my exam for my high school, but also the fact that those match fixing and all the scandals happening felt like, oh shit, maybe I was just dreaming. Maybe this was just a daydream for me. Maybe I should just get a grip of reality and maybe I just move on. So Yeah, that was the moment that I had a lot of identity struggles as a fan too, and I felt like it's just like all those years I had an interest was just a daydream for me. So is it just something I really aspired for was just a mirage? Maybe that's what I felt honestly at the time.
So the last OSL, you know, it was announced as being the last OSL. What were your feelings at that point for BroodWar?
Honestly, at that time, I already lost an interest about watching it. But still, one of my favorites, fantasy, was actually competing there. And the storyline was actually still very, very great. So, yeah, I remember watching that like, oh, it was a bummer that now it's just not going to happen anymore. So, yeah, so like, at the time, I thought like I had like, oh yeah, this is it. Yeah, I had my piece. Like, it's time to let go. It's just time to let go, and maybe I should just move on. And at the same time, I was very interested in a new game called League of Legends, and I was actually very against the League of Legends because I was playing another MOBA, but yeah, playing League of Legends made me kind of a dilute interest on Star League, and then and the last Star League happening was just like a kind of a last hurrah for me as well. As a viewer that I was just like yeah, let's one last good memory, and I really wanted to watch Fantasy win in the finals, but he couldn't get a second victory over. At last. So yeah, it was a tough moment to watch, but still, yeah, I was like, it was just a proper moment that I had to like, yeah, I get my peace with my StarCraft days, and yeah, goodbye.
So you didn't have any interest in StarCraft 2 when it was released?
No, actually, I had not, because like I was still like, for me, BroodWar was actually a more interesting game than StarCraft 2. And I actually even started playing. I played all the campaigns. I played all the campaigns, and the storylines was actually like, yeah, it's interesting. Storylines are great, but like, can I play as a competitor? Like, can I enjoy the game as I used to be in there? And I already have a new game that I enjoy, so like, why bother like having a, risk of exploring a new game? So yeah, like my initial interest in StarCraft 2 wasn't there. It just wasn't there anymore. So at that time, there was just too many other games that I had an interest to. So StarCraft 2 didn't just come on my mind. And I would say like, yeah, they can own their own. I mean, they have their own league, that kind of stuff. Like, and it's not a BroodWar anymore. So yeah, like, what can I have fun in that? So that's kind of the moment that I didn't really have an interest there. Yeah.
Would you say that was a common mentality for a lot of Koreans between BroodWar and StarCraft 2?
Honestly, I think it's just a half and half, I would say. I think for me, like, it was just thing that StarCraft BroodWar was still a far interesting game than StarCraft 2, in my mind. And a lot of people share that sentiment. And not just that, even if they were kind of interested to play it, it's just like Koreans are very sensitive about the trend. And at the time, StarCraft BroodWar was the dominating game at the era, but now it's not anymore because League of Legends took over. Right after the Korean launch of League of Legends, actually they took over the entire PC bongs. The PC bong had a game ranking like every week, as it was standards. And StarCraft BroodWar never, ever gave up the first place until League of Legends came out.
And StarCraft 2 didn't make it to that top 10 list, did it?
StarCraft dwindled a little, I would say. But quickly after the launch of the League of Legends dominated PC bongs. And it lasted years. Until the launch of Overwatch, for years, League of Legends just dominated week by week.
I mean, do you remember if StarCraft 2 ever placed on the top 10?
I remember that like it was listed on the list. I was on the list. I don't know like how far down it was, but it never gotten the spotlight that BroodWar had for sure. That's what I remember.
And how much of an indicator is the PC Bong like rankings for popularity in Korea?
You have to understand about PC bongs as a cultural trend, because PC bongs was actually the place you play the computer games until like 2017, like when you had your own personal gaming PCs after that. And not many people, owned the personal PCs until that time. Because I mean, even though gaming was very popular, and even though you played a lot of video games, maybe a lot of manias maybe purchased it if you had enough money. But it was actually the time that having an own personal gaming PC was not a common thing. So you have to understand then where do you play your own games? Then is actually a PC bongs. You cannot just actually play it in your own time. And when you have it with if you have like some $1 or $2 in your pocket, you can just use it cheap as well, and you can just like go right after school. Then you can just go there, and then you can just enjoy. So PC bongs was actually it naturally became a culture trend for games. So every Korean gaming companies knows that you have to dominate you have to get your own share in PC bongs to success. So naturally, you think that PC bong rankings actually shows that how popular your game is. So yeah, in that sense, that the PC bong rankings meanings as a cultural phenomenon, then definitely PC bong ranking had a big influence there.
And for the audience, can you describe what that PC bong means? Like, it means room, but yeah.
Yeah. So PC bong. So people play like after you watch your games, like even whether it's on stream or whether you play on site, then right after that, like most of the people like just go straight up to PC bongs to play the game, play your own game. Like, oh shit, that was good, such a good play. I should play it on that rank right away. Yeah, I should go to PC bong right now. Well, yeah, let's go. I'm so fucking hyped right now. After seeing those games, I'm so hyped. Yeah, I should go there and then play my own as well. Even if we're not skilled as those pro players, but still. At that moment, we're playing like as if we are that kind of pros. So yeah, that's as an audience, there's kind of I would say some ecstasy. I would say it's the ecstasy the game gives, the pro games gives you, that actually goes on to play your game on the PC bongs. So that, in that perspective, I think I can explain the influence of the PC bongs there as an audience.
Can you translate what PC bong means?
So PC bong is actually an internet cafe, if you translate to English. So you have a lot of of course, PCs and all individual seats. Like you have dozens or even like hundreds of PCs line up. It's just like a public library, like you have just like own self corner of a space, and then you can just read, right? it's just like that. So every there's like 100 seats of like dozen seats of with own PC setup within seats. So you can just use internet, or you can just do play games and that kind of stuff with your with the PC. Yeah.
And then we're going to have to skip forward quite a bit, because when did you start to get into StarCraft 2?
So yeah, I was into other games during those periods, during the periods after StarCraft BroodWar ended, and I got discharged from the military in late 2018. So I still was in the other game called PlanetSide 2. And I had some like community events. I organized some of the like Korean community stuff, because it just got lost. It was actually, we were like nomads because we didn't have our own server after it was closed down in 2015. So yeah, I was one of the kind of a community leaders of the Korean PlanetSide back then. But after I got back, the game was changed somehow, and it's just like, it didn't really felt like the game I used to play anymore. So yeah, and then streaming was actually hot back then, and I just looked into some of the streamers who were streaming the PlanetSide, and I found out the streamer called Winter, and he actually played StarCraft 2 as well, and he casted it. And okay, he's interesting. And I got to watch his casting, and I think it was like WCS Winter qualifiers, I guess. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, it's interesting. It's not that bad that I expected, because like I remember shortly playing StarCraft 2 like in 2015, 16, like when Legacy of the Void happened, but it was like, it wasn't just interesting to me, but after like some time, like I heard the chatter when I was in the military, like, oh, the StarCraft 2 fans, like they're sharing their like results on the event. So like was having a little interest of going there, but seeing the casting and also seeing Crank casting on their on the Korean counterpart on their own on his own leagues was actually oh yeah. I didn't really know that after I thought it was like basically dead after 2016. Like, okay, this is interesting. So, yeah, so I got into getting into StarCraft 2, and then I finally get to see GSL on site, and I never felt more alive by going back into StarCraft 2 then. I never felt like I would relive all those moments that I had in BroodWar when I went to the GSL studio. So immediately after, I quickly dived into StarCraft 2 and started playing it, and it was much more interesting than I expected. The game was developed like much better. So yeah, so that's how I interacted got to interact with Winter more, and I got to I got to be his GSL correspondent by talking him in Discord while I was in a GSL studio watching GSL games, while he was doing a watch party. So yeah, it was a very interesting time and a very interesting memories I had. And I got an opportunity to sponsor the show matches for Crank. And then after I wanted to make more events, then Crank was unavailable because he was doing his own stuff, because he was also a streamer. So then what should I do? We have like, I wanted to make an event and there was no one to stream it. So, well, my childhood dream was actually being a caster, like after seeing Caster John casting in the desk a long time ago, that reminded me that, yeah, maybe I should do it. Maybe I should do it. Maybe I can be a caster. I don't know. I don't have the like great knowledge about the game, but still, maybe I can study, because I studied a lot of history after I got into the esport again. So yeah, I should definitely dive in again. So that's how I got into casting in Korean. And luckily for me, the next year after that I got into involved, the COVID happened. So COVID was sucked for mostly everyone, but actually for me, it was an opportunity. So there was a lot of online cups and the online events happening, and I get to cast the weeklies. And now after the ESL Open Cups actually announced, I get to be registered as one of the casters, and then I get to host my own some of the stuff, like own tournaments, and then I kind of just made my bucket list happen, literally. So yeah, that's how I got to involved in StarCraft 2 esports.
And one of the first live events that you did was 2022 Katowice. Do you remember watching those finals of Olivero winning?
It was 2023, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, yes.
So 2022 was the first one, and 2022, I didn't know what to expect, honestly, because honestly, my invitation as a translator was actually very sudden, So at first I wasn't expected to have a gig, but actually I was actually recruited on the spot, really, because I was heading to Katowice to manage the guy who's competing on my team, because I was in Prep Esports, one of the Korean teams that was sponsoring Haas. And Haas was competing, so I was literally just going for a manager for Haas, and then Crank actually messaged me because I knew him when I made translations for his YouTube videos, and then he messaged me that we're having a it's situation, and we're looking for a Korean translator there. So are you available? And yeah, I'm literally going there. So yeah, I can definitely do that. So yeah, that's how I got recruited on spot. So I didn't know what to expect, honestly, but it was the finals that actually happened on the Spodek. It was the last finals happened on the Spodek. So I kind of missed that the Spodek finals. It was just the first and the last finals I ever get to experience there. So it wasn't the finals that I hoped, because it was CVZ. It was Sarah versus Rainer, I guess, as I remember correctly. But even though the crowd was even though the crowd wasn't full and was just half full there, because mostly my main event was CS, of course. So it was literally early in the 2 p.m. stuff, 2 p.m. 3 p.m. kind of stuff, and it was way earlier than main event happening on CS. So it was not that crowded, but I still remember all the people gathering up, cheering for Cyril and Rainer respectively, was actually very one of the memorable moments of my career, because in StarCraft 2 nowadays, it's just hard. Sometimes it's so hard to experience that kind of a big, moments. And thank God EWC happened now, but it just felt like the finals in Spodek actually one of the core moments of the StarCraft 2 history, I feel. That's what I feel, because long after BlizzCon's gone, this is the only thing we have left. And the year after, when Katowice announced then they're not going to Spodek anymore, actually that was a moment that I was very had a devastating feeling. Yeah.
Did you have any thoughts about the first foreigner versus foreigner finals?
Honestly, I knew that after emergence of Cyril, that this day would come eventually, because everyone every foreign player is now getting so good, and there was literally like no new Korean players coming out. So yeah, then eventually, foreigners can catch up. There's no, new blood happening in Korea. I mean, even though still the remaining Koreans are so good still, but how can you replace all those fresh bloods when you are so old? And so I thought it would eventually going to happen, but I didn't really expect it would happen that soon, honestly. It was like, yeah, I mean, Raynor won 2021, but it was online. And besides Cyril, like, who would be an actual contender? I mean, yeah, I knew Raynor was so good, Clem was getting good, and there was like still like few names that comes to my mind that had a very interesting, run. But still, it was just like, even among those Koreans, the Korean players, that, yeah, it's just Cyril. It's just Cyril. Like, if we can just beat Cyril, then it's, it's our game. But I think that finals is the moment that shatters the sentiment there. I would say the nail in the coffin there, I would say.
What to you is StarCraft's legacy?
So for me, StarCraft is actually the one game that made an influence that, gaming can be a dream. I think that would be a common sentiment for everyone. And I would say, like, StarCraft esports left a lot of influence in the other esports. First of all, now the phrases they used in StarCraft esports now used in common language. And GG, literally good game that actually like represented the end of the game of StarCraft, now is just used in every game. Like casters, every Korean casters are now chanting GG at the end of every game. Now, no matter the genre, no matter what the game is, if you have a match end, there is always a call called GG. And StarCraft esports is, well, I would say like arguably the start of the professional esports, because like I would say, yeah, the CS happening, yeah, whatever it is. But still, I would say the impact of StarCraft has influenced a lot of the other esports leagues. And I would want to specifically say about the GSL style format. Everyone would say like everyone would say what an GSL style format will be like. Oh, it was a group stage league kind of style format, but it's GSL. The GSL has Global StarCraft 2 League. Do you know that? What the hell is what the hell is Global StarCraft 2 League? Maybe would mention that, because every game I see. And every time I see about the like GSL style format, it was seeing like, this is the dual tournament style league. What do you mean like GSL format? Have you ever seen GSL? And do you know what the GSL actually means? And people will say like, what the hell is that? And you get to realize that then StarCraft esports actually like had an influence on your daily basis that more than you know. It's just like if it stems on your language, it stems on your culture. It just gets to the infiltrate on your daily basis. So even though you haven't like experienced properly on the StarCraft esports, even though you haven't like heard of like StarCraft, you will still know what those phrases mean by the popular culture, and you would, after you learn that, you'll know that, oh, it exists is because of that. So I would say the legacy of the StarCraft esports is just like more than just a game, I would say. I would say it was just at a start of a trend, cultural trend for an online era, and all the online culture that nowadays people uses. So I would say StarCraft kind of created one of the trends of that.
And finally, what does StarCraft mean for you?
So gaming, I would just want to focus on my gaming life before I mention about StarCraft. So gaming has a very love and hate relationship, I would say. But I really tried to hide like my interest in games because actually my family had an expectations for me. I wanted to be a good kid, so I kind of try to let go of my gamer side and let away my gamer side and try to focus on the other things, but I just couldn't let go. I just couldn't let it go because of all the experience I had and all the fond memories in the game that wanted me to stay there. So StarCraft BroodWar kind of represented me about my dreams, and StarCraft 2 represents me about liberation. Because I was struggle my whole life between those normal life and the gamer life. And StarCraft diving into StarCraft 2 and getting into StarCraft 2 as a translator career actually liberated me a lot as a human and as a gamer. So I'm really grateful of StarCraft series as a general. And if it wasn't for StarCraft, I would have been in a different life, I guess. Either I would have killed myself, honestly, or either I would have been a very disinteresting life. Very uninteresting life, sorry, yeah. So, yeah. So I would say StarCraft esports is a lifesaver.